Hello everyone. We're going to now go deeper into the code dissection, comparing files, showing the file and directory structure that I gave you, comparing that to what will allow you to successfully complete this application. Again, here's the interface for assignment 4. We'll also talk about the successive assignments or I should say the remaining assignments and what those will entail as well. Right now, I'd like you to look at the URL. Pay particular attention to the characters after the file name. Now, the file name here is customerform.jsp. Following that, we have a question mark and what's known as a key value pair. The key here is assign num, just something arbitrary that I made up to differentiate it from other assignments. So assignment num would be the key, and the distinction here would you have the equal key value pair equals I should say A4. Now when I click on A5, you'll see that now it is A5. I also have one for P2, but we didn't do the code for P2 yet. At least I'm not showing the code here for P2. But you could see now what will happen, and I'll show you in the business logic why it did that, excuse me, is because there is no code that I have set up right now for P2. But again, I'll click on A4 and A5 and look at the key value pairs that are being used here. And we're using the one file, customerform.jsp, for the last 3 assignments, A4, A5, and P2. Look at the difference here between A4, A5, P2, and A3. A3 goes as per A1, as per A2, and as per Project 1, all go into their own specific directory structures and have an index.jsp. Not so for A4, A5, and P2. And the reason why is because the form we're going to be using is the same. And so there's no need to do that. We could have actually done it for P1 as well too, but I wanted to show you how we could use what's known as a query string to use business logic and allow the business logic to be modified based upon that query string. The other thing I want to point out here is that this is just one key value pair. You can add to this by including an AND symbol and then another key value pair. So something like this. I could also do another and put, say, key 2 and then value 2. And I could keep doing this on and on. Now, there is a character limitation that you must follow in browsers. The character limitation is dependent upon the browser. Some allow more. Generally, it can be quite long actually, but there is a specification for each browser that allows a certain number of characters in the URL. That's another topic for now, but that's how you would differentiate key value pairs by the AND symbol. You would just separate them. Here we are only using one key value pair, so we don't need to use the AND, as you'll see in the code that I'm about to show you. All right, gang. On the left-hand side is my code and directory structure. On the right-hand side is yours, as you can tell from the address bar there. So mine is on the left, yours is on the right. We're going to go into the global directory, and we're going to do something really quick just to show you a couple things. One, powerful tools that you can use, and two, the differences between the two files. What I'm going to use, gang, is a tool in Emacs called EDIF, E-D-I-F-F, EDIF. It stands for differences. So I'm going to show the differences between the two files. And there's a Unix. It actually is it's a version of the Unix diff command. Unix has had the diff command for many years, and what that will show you is just the differences between files, buffers, even directory structures. Emacs is a more powerful version of that, but it's based upon the Unix diff command. And again, gang, not to proselytize here on text editors, but I highly encourage you all to learn either Emacs or VI or Vim, VIM, because you'll find those text editors on all operating systems. You can find Emacs and VI on all Unix operating systems, all Windows, Mac operating systems. You can get VI and Emacs for each one. And it will come by default on Unix, on all Unix systems. So if you're on a dummy terminal accessing a mainframe, you're not going to be able to pull up Sublime or Notepad++ or Notepad 2 or Text Wrangler. You're going to have to use either VI or Emacs, and it's important that you at least learn the basic commands in either VI or Emacs. All right, I'm going to open up mine, nav.jsp. I'm going to max it out so we could see the difference here. I'm going to change the color, and I'm going to invoke a command called ediff files. You can see that in the lower left corner of the screen here, ediff files. What I'm going to do, I'm going to compare file A, which is mine, and then I'm going to go to your directory structure, student files, global, and nav, and immediately you could see the highlighted areas. Excuse me. Now, you're thinking, well, it's not very clear, and it's not, to be quite honest with you, but that's because it just opened up the files. When I invoke a couple key commands, you'll see that it'll immediately make clear what the differences are. But you could see an overview of what the differences are. And if you wanted to, you can go line by line without even navigating through it to see those differences. But I'm going to show you a much easier way of doing that. Now, in Emacs, all I have to do is either do the space bar or the key character N for Nancy, lowercase n. If I want to go back, I just hit the P key, P for previous. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to hit N, and you can see now it still shows the differences. The remaining differences are in gray, and the actual difference that I'm on is highlighted. Mine on the left, which is file A, and file B is yours on the right. And immediately you need to add these differences. You need to make these changes. So what do you need to do? Well, what you were given is just index.jsp, but what you're going to do is change A4, A5, and P2 to this particular directory structure. And let me make this a little bit larger. And file. So you see that I have to go up to the parent directory. In the parent directory, there should be a file called customerform.jsp, which you have in your directory structure. If you look here, I gave that to you. There's customerform.jsp. Okay. And then what you have to do is add this query string. And again, you have to put the question mark. Assign _num is the key, as I mentioned before, and the value is equals A4. For A5, I did the same, and for P2, I did the same. So you're going to have to add that to your file structure there. And you could see, again, the difference. I'll make that a little bit larger for you as well on your side, and you can see that difference. Now, I'm going to go back here to the bottom here, and I want to show you a real powerful tool that I could use right now. If I hit the letter A, now obviously you're not going to be able to do this because you don't have the files that I have. The files that I created both sets of files, by the way. The files that are necessary for a successful completion, and the files that I just didn't want to give you the files, the solutions to them. So I made it so that you would actually have to learn how to write a query string and make sure that it worked. But here, if you do have access to the files, and you do have a good text editor that can diff files, here all I have to do is tap the key A, and it'll automatically put the changes in. Notice that? Automatically, if you look at yours, it just made the changes immediately. And again, a very, very powerful tool for working with large amounts of text, particularly with code. But we're not going to do that. I'm going to make the change back and just go back to what you have here, and then just go to the next difference by tapping either the space bar or the character N for next. And when I do that, you'll see that it shows the next difference. And as I mentioned, you're going to have to do that for the P2 link as well. So when you navigate here from now on, it will go correctly to the business logic of customer form.jsp. And you'll see why, when we get to the business logic, why we needed this key value pair. Okay? All right. I'm going to close out of this. There's another file that you need to modify as well, and it too is in the global directory. So I'm going to open up, that was nav. The next one is nav_global. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to do an ediff on those files. So here's mine, and I'm going to ediff yours. Go to student, global, nav, underscore, and you can see the changes that you're going to have to make there as well too. Okay, I'll make this a little bit larger for you. Let me go in here and make that a little bit larger. And then now I'm going to navigate through the changes. Okay, same thing. You're going to have to do the same thing. Be careful, gang. Here, notice that we're in nav_global. We're not going up to the, there's no .. // So how this works is, you still have to put the remaining code, the key value pairs in here, but we're in nav global, and how that works is when we click on home, depending on where you're going, if that's an external link, it's not going to work, but when we click on course, that's actually going to the main course. So in other words, what we're doing is here we're in the course main directory. Okay, so when I'm in the LIS4368 and I click on a link here, say A3, what I want to do is go inside of A3 to get to index.jsp. Not so when I'm in index here. So I'm index here, and I want to get to, or my apologies, when I'm in, say, A3 or P1, I'm in this index. What I need to do, so if I'm in, say, P1, what I need to do is come out of P1, in other words, .. / come out of P1 so that I can get to another subdirectory. But this nav_global is the navigation file for the main page. So here, notice there's no .. I'm just going into each subdirectory. Hence, there's no .. in the to the links here. Okay. All right. Let me now close out of this and show the next difference. I'm going to do the easy one. I'm going to do thanks. So we'll do thanks here. I'm going to compare my thanks.jsp file to yours. I'm going to ediff that file. So this, and then go into student and thanks and show the difference here. Make it a little bit larger. And go over here, make it a little bit larger, and then do a comparison. Now, I'm going to tap the character N. I'm going to tap the character N here. Notice there's a timestamp. We don't care about that. I put a timestamp on my files just to know when they were modified. Yours doesn't have that, but that doesn't matter. It's not going to affect the code. What it will affect the code, though, is you'll notice that we're using a user object, and the properties to that user object are FName, LName, street, city, state, zip, phone, email, balance, total sales, and notes. And again, notice there's no spaces with those naming conventions. Be very careful, gang. As you know, Mac and PC both allow you to use spaces in your file names and directory structures. Get out of that habit. It's not a good habit to be in because it can cause you a lot of problems in coding. Here, these aren't files or directory structures, but these are property names. And notice the difference. I gave you user.fname. User is an object reference. It's an object variable. We're going to be using that to access the property of FName and LName, street, city, state, zip. So you have to add this. Notice the difference. Mine's on the left, yours is on the right. You're going to have to add that code. Okay? And you're going to use what's known as the expression language. The $ here, curly bracket, object reference, user dot property name, and then you finally close that expression syntax. And this is specific, this expression syntax. It looks a little bit familiar to a PHP variable, but it's not. It's a Java Server Pages tag library using the, here's not a tag library, but we're using expression language. Java Server Pages EL stands for expression language. So you need to add that. And then we're going to go to the next one, and you'll notice that at the bottom here it says at end of two differences. We're at the end of two diffs. So there are no more differences in those files. I'll just navigate here just so you can see the remaining end of that. There's no difference here. They're all the same. The only differences are highlighted now in gray that you'll have to add. Okay, so that's the thanks.jsp file. And what we're going to do now is go to the customer form. And that customer form has a lot going on here, gang. So I'm going to open up mine. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to ediff this file. I'm going to change the color right away. First thing I want you to know is, and see, I'll make this a little bit larger, is this call to the core tag library. And now this is so that we could use the Java Server Pages tags, and we'll, along with the tags, we'll be using the expression language again that you've seen in another file, and that's using the $ with open and closed curly brackets, or curly braces, if you will. Also notice that we're going to be using this. We gave this. We're accessing the tag library using that URI, and then we're going to use the prefix C for our tags, and that is just so that in the code it's saying that we're going to prefix the C, use a tag library so we can invoke some commands by using the Java Server Pages tag library, but we have to put this at the top of our file. Okay, I'm going to go back and make this a little bit smaller, and now I'm going to ediff my file with your file. So here's my file. I'm going to go to your file, and I'm going to go to the customer form. And you can, again, see one difference is the timestamp. Now, everything else here is the same. I got some comments in here. Please make sure you change the meta name there. Let me make this a little bit smaller here. But make sure you change the description to something that's pertinent to what you want to accomplish. Obviously, change the author name. You don't want my name in there because this is going to be your work. And notice on line 16 here, your line 13, but on my line 16, it's JSP forms, and that's what we're working. We're working with JSP forms. All right, I'm going to go back here and start my diff of the code. There's a timestamp. Tap the character, key character N for next, and the next one now is showing the comparison of what you received to what you have to place in your code. And I'm going to go to that right now. Oops, hit the debugger by accident. I'm going to go to this, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll here and show the code that you're going to need. Now, you were given F-name, L-name, and email, and of course notes. And what you're going to have to put in here is the street, and notice you're going to have to put this expression language syntax. I'm going to make this a little bit larger. Too large. It overlapped. I guess I'm going to have to keep it like this, gang, so you could see it. So you could see all the code, because it is a single-sided tag. That's why we have to have the space and the ending of that. That makes it proper XHTML. And by the way, it's also proper XML syntax. HTML5 allows you to be sloppy, and it's unfortunate because HTML5, the way you can write it, will not conform to XML specifications. Anyway, we're using the expression language here. Notice it's wrapped in double quotation marks. Okay, that customer is a customer. In the previous one, we used a user object variable. Now we're using a customer object variable that I'm going to show you in another variable. I'm sorry, in another video. I'm going to show you the customer, the customer object that we created, as well as the user object we created, we instantiated. And the property here is street. You got your properties are F name, L name, and you're going to have to add the street, accessing the customer object and the properties of street, city, state, zip, phone. You were given email, so you don't have to worry about that. And now I'm going to show the remaining ones. Tap the key character N, and it shows you that after email, you're going to have to do balance as well as total sales. Now, notice also in notes, I didn't include, in your notes, you're going to have to include this if you want the notes to show correctly. So look at your notes. I didn't add the expression syntax here, and you're going to have to add that. So take a look here, the difference. You'll see in notes comparison what you'll have to change. You'll have to add that expression syntax there. Using the $, the open and close curly brackets, the object reference or object variable customer, and the property notes. So it's object variable dot property, or if you want, object variable dot attribute. I'm going to do an N there again, showing any further differences, but gang, you really don't need that here. Well, you do, but you should be able to use the regular expressions that you used for your index.jsp file to work here with this code. So what I gave you, what I provided here for you is your first name, last name, your email, and if you want, you could see and use this code as well too. So there's last name. Here is the client-side validation for street. And again, you can use yours from project number 1. So I'm just going to go through this rather quickly. If you did project 1, correctly, then this should work for you as is. State, zip, phone, and of course you have email, and then lastly here your balance, and of course total sales. Okay, and I could show that again by just tapping the character N. Shows balance and total sales are changed as well too. So that's the, again, that's the, if I just type P for previous, it goes back up through the file. You can see it's a very powerful tool to use the diff command, and in Emacs is called ediff. All right, gang, we're going to go into the POJOs, P-O-J-O. What we call those are plain old Java objects. Now, some people call them differently. They're actually Java beans, but some people will refer to them as POJOs, P-O-J-O, for plain old Java objects. We'll talk about in the next video why those are called that and some of the characteristics. All right, gang. See you in a bit.